You're here in Silicon Valley to talk about the role of tech in society and government, but we have to start with Brexit. What do you think the chances are that Prime Minister May loses this vote in a matter of hours?
I think it's pretty clear that she will lose it. And then, you know, we're in a big mess, but we've been in a big mess for the best part now of almost 3 years.
So if she loses, is there still time to stop the UK from crashing out of the EU without a deal?
Yes, because I think what will happen is her deal will be voted down. That looks like the most likely thing. And then tomorrow there will be another vote on whether we should crash out or not. And Parliament will reject that, since there's always been a huge majority in Parliament against no deal. So I've always said it's very, very unlikely this will happen. And then, frankly, we will be into an application for an extension of the process. And then the issue will be, well, how long and for what purpose?
Will there ever be a deal, though, that Parliament will accept?
Well, the important thing is to realise that there are two separate issues around the deal that the Prime Minister's presented. One is around this so-called Irish backstop and all the questions to do with keeping the border between Northern Ireland and the south of Ireland open, because for the first time that border is going to be the external border of the European Union, and the only way you can keep trade between north and south and freedom of movement of people between north and south frictionless, in other words easy, is if Northern Ireland remains part of the customs union of Europe and of the single market, at least for goods and agricultural products. The problem is the government wants that border to be frictionless and open, but at the same time it wants out of those two parts of the European trading system. So that's one issue. And then the separate issue is that we then have got to decide our future relationship with Europe. And at the moment there's just a fundamental division. If we get out of Europe, do we get out with a soft Brexit, which is we get out of the political system but remain part of the trading structures of Europe, single market and customs union, or do we get out of both? We get out of the political system and also the economic system as well. And the first one of those alternatives is kind of pointless, because you're still in the European rule-based system and abiding by the European rules. And the second is painful because, you know, we've been 4.5 decades as a country trading inside that European system.
You've been pushing for a second referendum. What are the chances now of that happening?
Well, people will tell you they're very low still, but I think if we have an extension of time, the important thing is for Parliament to be forced to confront the essential choice. Do you want a soft Brexit or do you want a hard Brexit? And if you want neither, that's the point at which it makes sense to go back to the people and say, look, in these last 2.5, 3 years, we know so much more about what Brexit means. We've got so much of a deeper appreciation of its significance for our economy and for our country, that it's right in these circumstances that the final say should be with the British people, and they decide, do they want to continue and get out of Europe, or do they want to think again?
Business has largely backed Remain, at least the first time around. Is that evolving?
You know, I think business has always been in the same position, because for the business that, you know, 60% of our trade is locked into this European system. So if you get out of it, for business it's a problem. So for example, if you're a car manufacturer in the UK, you know, your car parts will be manufactured in the UK, they'll have different bits done in France, they'll be moved to Germany, they'll come back all just in time to the UK. So you need the border, the trading border, to be open. You know, London's the financial centre for the euro, but Britain is not in the single currency. We can do that because we're part of the single market rules for finance. So if you're in the position of a business that's doing business in Europe, of course you want to remain part of the European trading system.
So if Prime Minister May loses this vote, as you seem to think she will, what are her options, given that time is running out?
Well, her option, frankly, is to go back to Europe to seek an extension and then bring Parliament to a decision.
Have you been speaking with French President Emmanuel Macron and telling him to hold firm? That's what the reports are saying.
It's so ridiculous, this, because you don't... First of all, I haven't, but secondly, you don't need to be telling. I mean, what I've said to President Macron is what I've said to all the European leaders, which is, you do whatever you're going to do in your side of the negotiation. Although, as I say, it's not really a negotiation, it's a choice in the end. And you can choose a soft Brexit or a hard Brexit. So that part of it has always been obvious. What I've been saying to them is something different, which is, if Britain is prepared to think again, then you, Europe, should also think again. Because the truth is, the issues that gave rise to Brexit are Europe-wide issues. They're not British issues. Immigration, feeling of communities left behind, the casualties of globalization, the feeling that Europe was integrating in a way that people had lost control of, are very similar themes that you can see all over the world at the moment. And the smart thing would be for Britain to think again, and Europe also to think again and put forward a package both on immigration and on the future of Europe that meets those concerns.
Are they prepared to think again? I mean, what is their game plan? Will they make more concessions?
Well, I don't think they'll make any more concessions on the essential nature of the deal, because, as I say, in the end, look, what Britain's been trying to say to the Europeans is, hey, we want to be in your single market and customs union in terms of access, but we don't want to abide by the rules, which is what people have described as the cake and eat it position. I mean, that was never going to work. What is completely bizarre to me is why we literally have got to this point without those in control of this process seeming to understand that in the end, you either are in this single market and customs union or you're out of it. You can't be half in it and half out of it. It's not the way it works. So I think that in the end, it's not a question of Europe making concessions. It's a question of, if Britain makes a choice, say for a hard Brexit or a soft Brexit, Europe will facilitate that. If, on the other hand, Britain says, no, we want to go back and put this again to the people, then that's the point at which I think Europe should say, OK, we are now going to look at a different offer, not just for Britain, but for the whole of Europe. And that would be the sensible thing to do, because, by the way, Britain coming out of Europe is bad for Britain, it's bad for Europe.
Do you think Prime Minister May should resign?
It's not, and to be honest, it doesn't matter whether it's Theresa May or it's someone else. You've got to make a decision. And the important thing, if you're Prime Minister at this moment, I think, is to lay out for people the realistic options. Mm-hmm. Explain what a soft Brexit might look like and what its pros and its cons are. Explain a hard Brexit, and then guide people to a conclusion.
So what outcome are you betting on? And what does that mean for the UK long term?
I think it's extremely difficult right now to judge where this will go. Look, I hope it will go back to the people, and I think if it did, you will get a different result. Because I think in the end, the British people, I think, have had enough of experience of this process to know this is going to be, it's going to be painful for us to leave, and it's not sensible for us to leave. I mean, there's nothing we want to do with our country that we can't do inside the European Union. So that's what I hope. Whether that happens or not, I really don't know. I mean, I think right now we're in a period of unique unpredictability. Mm. But the one thing I'm quite sure of, and it's important to say this for any business audience, is one, I really do not think we will crash out without a deal. I think that is highly, highly unlikely. It would have to be a series of accidents that would lead that to happen. And secondly, whatever happens, I mean, even if we do Brexit, which obviously I don't want, but if we do it, Britain will sort itself out in the end. We're a strong country. We've got a lot of great assets and great people. I mean, if in the end we have to do Brexit, we'll make the best of it. It's just that I would prefer us not to.
Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party is not the new Labour Party of Tony Blair. There's,
no, I think that would be
accusations of
yeah.
anti-Semitism threatening to split the party. I mean, in your view, what went wrong?
Well, it's the same forces that are going on around the world, is that people are going to the right and to the left. And the great cry is for radical change. And the problem is, and this is what I think is the biggest challenge of politics and why I'm actually here in Silicon Valley, is that we're talking about the wrong things. So the left thinks it's all about stopping business, the right targets immigrants. I mean, there are issues to do with business, there are issues to do with immigration, but the future of our countries is going to be determined by how we absorb and make sense of and handle the technological revolution, and that's what we should be talking about.